Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It's February 25th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And really interesting how this turned out today. You can see we traded way down here and actually got into oversold territory, and a lot of buying came in and we bought it back, and we ended up closing back up around this previous support. So does that mean this support's going to hold? We're going to go higher now? Or will we push back down through here again in another attempt to test these lows? It's hard to say at this point. You can't tell anything about what we have going here since 5 o'clock. Um, we could trade lower here and close back well inside this, and this support ended up holding. But this is interesting that we traded all the way down here. We just didn't quite get low enough to test the previous support. Now, if you move this line up a tad, we get really close. And that might be where I played it because that's where you get more touches from, including the closes and then from the underside as well. So that may be more accurate. So we got really close. So, and then the buying came in. So we may be done for the downside. We may not be. We'll just have to kind of see how tomorrow plays out and go from there. But just looking at this, again, we didn't quite. If we'd have tested this and traded back up and this turned bullish, I'd say, hey, maybe there's a good chance that we go higher tomorrow. But just looking at the way it is, it kind of leaves a question mark. So we need some more. We need another bar. We need to see what tomorrow brings. So we'll wait for tomorrow before we determine if this sell-off is over. But so far, it's been a fairly strong sell-off, and if you following everything's down. I mean, the crypto coins are all down, the markets are all down, everything's down. So, and they're down pretty good over the last few days. So, it's just been uh, it's just been one of those times where everything's down. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. Again, it's a little difficult to know now. We need another bar or two before we can probably have a good idea. But tomorrow may give us more clues. So we'll see. But there it is on the daily chart. You can see we sold off really strongly, but we're covered a good deal of. We still closed down, but nothing like where we were at one point. So I would just call this a mixed trading day. When you see the 2,000 tick chart, that's how it looks, like a mixed trading day. But let's flip over there and take a look at that chart, and we'll go through the trades and try to wrap this day up. Okay, as you can see, this was a really tough trading day. We started out in this range, looked like it was going to be a range day, but this just broke lower and just traded way down. And it looks like we have a bigger two-tiered channel, but it looks like we also got an overshoot before we went lower, and then just kind of reversed, and then we spent probably from lunchtime on just chopping sideways before closing closer to the afternoon highs. So really interesting day. This is a hard day to trade. I mean, early on it was mostly down, so it wasn't too difficult. But once this thing reversed, there's not a lot of setups here, and it just got harder to trade as well. So there's some stretches in there where you just had to sit tight and kind of wait because it was hard to know what was going on. So, but anyway, let's zoom in here and we'll work through these trades. 7 o'clock came right in here. I can't remember exactly which bar. 7 o'clock. I think it was right in here, maybe. Just as we're topping out here, we hit 7 o'clock, and then we made that one more push up, and that gave us a first entry, second entry short off these highs up here. And notice you got the close out, a couple of swings up, but you get a second entry short right there. Let me zoom in a little bit more here, make this a little easier to see. So I like going short one tick below that just to try to ride it back to the EMA, and if it turns back down, if this is the highs, it'll turn back down, and maybe we'll test the lows again. It ends up going lower, but it doesn't go too far before it starts working sideways, and it comes back, and it confirms this trend here. I don't see anything in here I like or going long. There is a second entry long here. Um, Technically, it makes a little higher push here, so it's one leg down. But what you have is you have a leg up and you have a little two-legged correction, and then you have a second leg up. So if you notice that, maybe you take that trade. Um, it's a little harder to spot, and so it's not for everybody. But if you're a little more skilled and you recognize that, then by all means trade it. And you can see we got the we got a little more than two measured legs up there. But then you get another little two-legged correction. You get another second entry, but I'm not crazy about this one. This one looks like a little failed breakout of a little sideways congestion. Again, you might take it. It's not ideal or anything, but maybe you take it because maybe we're going to come back up to this trend line again, and we do um, end up testing that again and turning down. But I don't think that signal bar qualifies. It'd be just a first entry as well, so I think you have to skip that one. I did mean to talk about this as well. There's clearly a triple test there, but I don't think that signal bar is good enough. There's actually a first entry, and then you turn back higher here. So there's a second entry when it goes by here. So that's like a third entry, and it looks a little congested. So I just skip that trade. And then you got the possible two longs. And then we turn that off the trend line again, come back, and we make a lower high here. I like very bearish bar. I like going short right there. And you may argue that, hey, there's a reversal pattern right here. I did not mark it, but if you see that, there is room to get out before these lows. We bounced down here a couple of times. So it's another possibility. There's a bunch that you could probably argue to be green today because it's just that kind of day. But what I ended up doing was this almost looks like sideways here, and then this is where the trend. So that looks like two legs down, and that looks like a reversal pattern. So maybe you take it. I went back and forth whether that should be red or green, but I think that's a little harder to find. I think I'm going to go back and change that. Just like I added that one green, I'm going to change this one to green. It's clearly two legs down where you're looking for a possible reversal off this uh, trend line up here. But technically, that's a lower high, that's a lower high, and that's a lower high. So, but I think the downtrend started here, so that's your two legs down in your reversal, and you can see how how bearish that was, and that's because most people spotted that reversal. And then we run on down. We get a break here. Notice you get a close outside. It's not super convincing, but you definitely get a close outside here at a new high, and so you're still a little ways from the EMA. So maybe you go short right there. I marked it green. It's not a perfect setup, but maybe you take it. And of course, this thing drops on down, so it looks like we're going to get a breakout here. It's not going to fail. I mean, it did fail temporarily, but most all breakouts at least fail temporarily. But most of them are going to fail permanent, failed for enough to get back in the range and start the range back. But this one failed temporarily, and then the downtrend started back, and we're still just kind of making these little shallow. It's kind of a sideways downward channel here. You probably could even draw a channel on that. I don't think you need it. You get a triple test here. It could argue a triple test, but there's no signal bar. But if you wait a few minutes, you get a perfect. This is what I'd call a perfect second entry. It confirms the trend line, is two legs back to the trend line and the EMA, and confirms it. Fairly decent sized bar. It's like 9 ticks. So on a real volatile day, that's a fairly decent bar, and the bottom just falls out of it. That's a perfect. That's what you're looking for in a trend. Two legs back to the key entry point and the EMA, and right there you get it. And then you drop all the way down here. You bounce, you get a first entry, second entry, and there is an overshoot there. So technically, you might argue, I think that bar is bearish enough that you enter there, but I think you need to wait on the lower high. So, and even then, you're still kind of the trend line's still in play, but I believe there's an overshoot there. Not everybody would see that, but you can clearly see that midline is holding right there. So a measured move puts it here, so that's more than a measured move. And so I believe that to be an overshoot. And so maybe you take the lower high. Maybe you take the second entry. Maybe you take the lower high. I think both of them are a little aggressive. And then all of a sudden you get a trend up, close outside new high, and a second entry and a bearish bar all in one. I like going short there. It takes out a couple of bars to take off, but that's a pretty good move down. And again, we get an overshoot here on the downside. So I think we were just overdone today. But we kind of run sideways and then take off. And this is basically just flat here. So I would count this as a new low. So you get a first entry, push through, second entry. So there's a failure reversal pattern there after all this is played out here. So maybe you take that one. Again, you're trying to pick a bottom, so it's a little aggressive, especially on a really bearish day like this. But you can see it would have worked out nicely. And then you get your break, move to a new high, and it turns down. Again, you might go short there, but a lot of times you get two legs, so it's a little early. So I think maybe you're better off to sit tight. And then you do get a second entry short there, but I don't think the signal bar is good enough. It looks a little congested, and it drops back down. And then you get a triple test here. You can see that. And that is also a first entry, second entry long. You're a good bit away from the EMA. That's a nice setup. And look at it go. You probably get a runner on that. And it just takes off. And then you get a close outside, a couple of legs up. So it's tempting to take that one, which, again, it's a little aggressive, but maybe you take it. But wait on the lower high and see what you get. And there's the lower high. And that's where you go short. If you take that, man, that's a nice move. And you're probably going to get a runner on that maybe too. It just depends on how you played it. But you might get a runner on that. It does come back here, so it would depend on how you play that. But if you catch a runner on that, that's a nice move. And you get to close outside, new low. You make a higher low here, but we're just in a range, and the signal bar is no good. It does break out, and you get two legs back, and it bounces off of it again. So that's a second entry long. I didn't mark that one. You would expect prices to retest the highs there, but at the same time, you just don't have much. You got plenty of room to that high, but the closes are way down here. So, and you see it close there again. So I'm not crazy about that one. Again, it's one you could argue for, and there's probably several green ones like that. And of course, you get your close outside, two legs up, and then you make a lower high. That just looks too sideways. Not a very good signal bar. Same thing here, but finally it breaks lower, comes back and tests it, and you get a triple test there and a big bearish bar. You would expect a retest of the lows on this channel, so I like going short there. And then you get another two legs back to the trend line and another bearish bar on a second entry short. As long as you got room to scalp out, go short again. Because you would expect prices are probably coming back down to test the trend line. And sure enough, that's exactly where they go. I wouldn't try to pick a bottom down here. You definitely need a higher low, and that comes here, and it's moved way too far. It comes back to the trend line here. There's a hidden second entry in there, and that bar is fairly low risk. It's 8 ticks. So, you know, maybe you take a chance there. Because we did just come off the lows again. There's a higher low here on the second entry, but it's right into that high. I just don't think you have enough room to get out there. This takes on off. You get another second entry here, but the signal bar is no good. But notice the close outside move to a new high, lower high, and then a failed second entry, but it's not setting up right. Really, I think we had another overshoot here. We had several of these today. Because look how that midline's kind of playing out there. And so I think we had an overshoot. This channel's working down. Close outside. Couple of legs down to a new low. and there's a second entry long, but again, I don't like the signal bar. There's a high or low here, but it's right into resistance. So I think that one's risky as well. And this runs on up, comes back, two legs back, so there's another second entry long, but no setup. Now you would have to go long right into the trend line. It does get a break, runs on up to a new high. Um, I would go ahead, since this just keeps going, I'd go ahead and draw another trend channel, and then it just turns. And you would think that you'd get a retest of that, but it never comes. And it turns down. You get a break here and a new low, and you can't call that a high or low, so that would be the first chance you could enter. And I'm just not sure I would enter there. You are a little piece away from the EMA, and if you enter, it does work. But again, it's just not one I'm crazy about. And you make a lower high here in the second entry, but the signal bar is no good. And that would have been a good move. Runs down to makes a low. Then you get a first entry pullback. So a break above that's a second entry, but again, it's not really where you want to be going long right into that trend line, because you see it's getting resistance again. It ends up breaking through and going right back up again, but you don't know that. So it's just too risky to go long there. You would expect prices to be going lower. But they probably wanted to attempt a retest of this high here. So it takes off. Then you get a first entry, move lower, second entry. Again, I wouldn't take that. And then you try to go higher again and make a lower high. But notice you do get a close outside the new high here and then make a lower high. It's a little congested, or I'd have probably made that red. You get a reversal, but this bar is on the wrong side. And it ends up taking on down two sideways. Now we're back in the trend channel. And notice you get a rally, close outside, tries to make a new high and makes a second entry. I'd wait for this to close. You can't trade that on the engulfing bar. And if you get a break below that, I'd go with it. And off it goes. And then you make a double top down here. And this is a perfect reversal pattern off these new lows we just made. So if you took that, I'm all about that one. And that one takes off. You probably would have got a runner on it. Close outside, new high. I don't think I'd go short there. I think I'd want a retest of the highs. If you did take it, I mean, I guess you could argue for it. If you did take it, it works. That's just a lot of momentum to be trying to pick a top. Comes back, gives you a first entry, and then we're just chopping sideways. I don't see anything there until you get a breakout. As long as you got room to scalp out before hitting these lows again, take that trade. Same thing on the breakout here. As long as you got room to get out before it gets back to these high, this blue line, take it. And ends up going higher and breaking out again. Not a good enough signal bar to enter there. Comes back down, makes a low. No break above that signal bar. This one's not good enough. And then you try to go lower twice and fail and get a nice bullish bar that closes back in the middle of this trading range. I like taking that one just to try to ride it back to the high, and maybe it takes off. And sure enough, it takes off. Runs all the way up. Close outside, new high. It is a second entry short. So it's one you might take. Again, waiting on a lower high would be better, but one never comes. So it takes us into 230. So there it is. A lot of trades today. Not the easiest day to trade. You had to draw those short-term channels and ranges and things, and there's a lot of green ones in there. And there always is on a day like this. And there's probably some more you might even try to argue for. If I didn't mark them, doesn't mean that you couldn't argue they were green. I'm not saying they are green, but I'm not saying you couldn't argue some of them too, because there's just a lot of trades, and you just want to be picky and pick the sure things, and there just weren't a lot of sure things today. I mean, there's still a good many red or blue. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10 of them. But for a day that's got that much price action, you would expect more than 8 trades. So, but you see how many green ones there are. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And there were a couple of others I could have marked that I didn't. So there's probably 20 green trades there, maybe even more if you really start digging in. Uh, but they just weren't good setups, or they weren't easy to see, or prices didn't do what we were expecting them to do. So you don't take them. But anyway, there it is. So I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.